The thunder cracked like a whip across the sky as James Carter's headlights swept across the empty street. He'd worked a double shift at the warehouse and was exhausted, but something made him slow down as he passed the Winchester estate. Through the sheets of rain, he saw her, a figure in black, crumpled on the cobblestone driveway like a discarded doll. "Dear God," James whispered, slamming on the brakes. He was out of his car before his mind fully processed what he was seeing. The young woman lay motionless, rain hammering her body. Her elegant funeral dress was plastered to her skin, and her lips had turned an alarming shade of blue. "Miss Winchester?" James dropped to his knees beside her, his voice urgent. "Victoria? Can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered. Recognition flickered in her unfocused gaze. "James," she managed through chattering teeth. "Help. She poisoned the water after the funeral." The mansion's front door opened, flooding the driveway with warm light. Diane Winchester stood there, immaculate in her black designer suit, a champagne glass in one perfectly manicured hand. Well, James Carter." Her voice was silk wrapped around steel. "Still playing the hero, I see. That piece of garbage has been trespassing. I was about to call the authorities." "This is her home," James said, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. Diane laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Not anymore. Richard is dead, and the will hasn't been probated. Who do you think the courts will believe? Me, or a disabled girl who can barely string two sentences together?" Victoria's hand weakly grasped James's jacket. "The will reading tonight." She didn't expect. "Dad left me controlling interest. Changed it 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago." James's blood ran cold. 3 weeks before Richard Winchester's car had mysteriously gone off a cliff on Highway 9. "You should leave while you still can," Diane said, her tone shifting to something darker. "Take her, and I'll have you arrested for kidnapping. You'll lose your job, your apartment, your daughter. That sweet little Emma will end up in foster care. You just admitted to poisoning her," James said quietly, dangerously. The door slammed shut. Locks clicked into place, one after another. James gathered Victoria into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, and her breathing was shallow and labored. In the harsh light of his car, he could see her pupils were dilated and unfocused. "Hospital?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "No," Victoria gasped. "Diane has doctors there, on payroll. They'll say I'm unstable. Commit me." The drive to James's small apartment took 25 minutes. Victoria drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling words that made his heart pound. "Will reading shocked everyone. 75% to me. Dad knew. Changed it after he found the emails. Diane and her lawyer." James's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Richard Winchester had been more than his employer. When James's wife died giving birth to Emma, Richard had paid for the funeral, given him 3 months off with full pay, and personally ensured Emma had the best pediatric care available. "Your father saved my life once," James said, though he wasn't sure Victoria could hear him. "When Sarah died, I wanted to give up. He wouldn't let me. Said Emma needed her father. Said I was stronger than I knew." He pulled into his apartment complex where Mrs. Chan, his elderly neighbor, was already waiting with blankets. He'd called her during the drive, his voice urgent but vague. "Oh, you poor child," Mrs. Chen clucked as James carried Victoria inside. "Let me prepare ginger tea. Real tea, not whatever poison put you in this state." "Daddy!" A small voice from the hallway stopped everyone. 7-year-old Emma stood there in her butterfly pajamas, her dark curls messy from sleep. She had James's brown eyes and her mother's gentle spirit. "Sweetie, why are you awake? I heard the door. Why is the lady all wet?" Emma approached slowly, her face concerned. "Is she sick?" "She got caught in the storm," James said gently. This is Miss Victoria. She's going to stay with us for a while. Okay? Emma studied Victoria with the direct curiosity of childhood. Then she ran to her room and returned with her favorite stuffed bunny, Mr. Whiskers. He helps when I'm scared, Emma said, placing the bunny carefully in Victoria's lap. He's very soft and he's a good listener. Victoria, despite everything, managed a weak smile. Tears finally came, not from pain or fear, but from the pure, uncomplicated kindness of a child who didn't see her wheelchair as something to pity. Once Victoria was warm and dry, wearing clothes Mrs. Chun had brought over, she told them everything. The story came in fragments, like pieces of a broken mirror slowly being reassembled. The will reading was at 6, she began, her voice steadier now. Diane was there with her daughter, Stephanie. They were both dressed like they were going to a celebration, not a legal proceeding. James poured coffee with hands that still trembled. Mr. Winchester talked about you constantly, said you were the smartest person in the company, even smarter than him. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. 3 weeks before he died, he called me into his office. He looked afraid, James. I'd never seen him afraid. She remembered that conversation with crystal clarity. Her father, the tech mogul who'd revolutionized cybersecurity, had pulled her close and whispered, "If anything happens to me, don't trust Diane. I found proof of what she's planning. I've made arrangements." He mentioned you, Victoria continued. Said if I ever needed help, I should find James Carter. Said you were the most honorable man he'd ever known. But I thought he was being paranoid, Victoria said, wiping her eyes. He'd been working on a huge government contract. The stress was enormous. I never imagined someone would actually... The will reading, James prompted. What happened? Mr. Harrison, Dad's attorney, announced that Dad had changed his will 3 weeks before his death. Left me 75% of everything. The company, the patents, the house, everything. Diane got a trust fund for 10 years. Stephanie got her college fund and nothing more. Mrs. Chin gasped. No wonder she tried to kill you. She was calm at first, Victoria said, her voice breaking. Terrifyingly calm. She said we should have water to toast Dad's memory, to discuss the transition. I was so stupid. I actually thought maybe she was accepting reality. The water tasted bitter, but I thought it was just the grief in my throat. Next thing I knew, I was outside on the driveway. No wheelchair. Rain pouring down. Diane stood in the doorway and said, Victoria's voice failed. What did she say? James asked gently. She said the car accident was supposed to look random. That even dead, Dad managed to ruin her plans. She said she'd have to handle me herself. The room went silent except for rain pattering against the windows. She killed him, James said flatly. She murdered Mr. Winchester. Emma had crept back into the room, drawn by the adult voices. Daddy, why is everyone upset? James pulled his daughter close. Sometimes bad people do terrible things to good people, sweetheart. But we help the good people, right? Always, Emma said firmly. Then to Victoria, did someone hurt you? Is that why you can't walk? The innocent question hung in the air. Victoria looked at this little girl who didn't see her wheelchair as something to whisper about or avoid. I was born this way, Victoria said softly. My body just works differently. Oh, Emma considered this. Like how Mr. Whiskers only has one ear, but he's still the best bunny ever? Exactly like that. James's mind was racing, processing everything with the careful attention to detail that had made him Richard Winchester's most trusted employee. He retrieved a box from his closet, spreading its contents on the coffee table. I kept maintenance logs of every vehicle in Mr. Winchester's fleet, he explained. Look here. The Mercedes was serviced 2 days before the accident. I checked everything personally. Brakes, tires, steering. Everything was perfect. He pulled out photographs. But I went to the impound yard after. Took these. Look at the brake lines. Victoria leaned forward, studying the images. Her background in engineering kicked in immediately. Those aren't wear marks, she said, her voice hardening. Those are cut marks. Deliberate. I've been carrying this evidence for 3 weeks, James admitted. I knew something was wrong, but I had no proof of who. I was just a driver. Who would listen to me? You weren't just a driver, Victoria said fiercely. Dad trusted you with his life. And now I understand why. We need to call Detective Morrison, Mrs. Chun said. She investigated the accident. She'll want to see this. Wait, Victoria said. Diane has resources. Money, connections, lawyers. We need more than photographs and accusations. We need irrefutable proof. Like what? James asked. Victoria's eyes lit up despite her exhaustion. Dad installed a security system last year after a corporate espionage attempt. Hidden cameras throughout the estate, motion-activated, stored on encrypted cloud servers. Diane doesn't know about them. Only Dad and I had access. James was already reaching for his phone when the doorbell rang. Everyone froze. It was past midnight. Nothing good came calling at this hour. Stay here, James said, moving to the door. He checked the peephole and went rigid. It's Stephanie, he said. Diane's daughter. Don't let her in, Victoria said immediately. But James had already seen the girl's face. Terror. Pure, absolute terror. He opened the door cautiously. Stephanie stood there, soaking wet, makeup running in black rivers down her face. Is she here? Stephanie's voice cracked. Victoria, please, I need to talk to you. Why should I trust you? Victoria's voice was cold. Because my mother is a monster, Stephanie said, her words tumbling out. And I helped her. I helped her drag you outside. I held your head while she forced the water down your throat. But I swear, I didn't know about Mr. Winchester. I thought we were just getting rid of you for the money. Just. Victoria's voice shook with rage. I know how it sounds. Stephanie fell to her knees. I'm 18 years old and I'm already a criminal. She raised me to see you as the enemy, as someone taking what was ours. But after we left you outside, she started celebrating, laughing about how easy it was to pay someone to cut the brake lines. And then she made a phone call. What kind of call? James asked. She was talking to someone about cleaning up loose ends. She said Victoria was loose end number 2. The mechanic who cut the brakes was loose end number 1. He died of a supposed drug overdose 2 days ago. The room went deathly quiet. She's killed 3 people, Stephanie whispered, and she's planning to kill Victoria tonight if she can find her. Why are you telling us this? Victoria demanded. Stephanie pulled out her phone with shaking hands. Because I recorded her. After what we did to you, I started recording everything. I have her confession. About your father, about the mechanic, about planning to kill you. She played the recording. Diane's cold voice filled the apartment. That crippled fool actually thought she could inherit my empire. Richard was a sentimental idiot, changing his will behind my back. But accidents happen. Brake lines fail. And paralyzed girls sometimes disappear. I have someone coming tonight to handle the Victoria problem permanently. James was already dialing Detective Morrison. Within an hour, the small apartment was surrounded by police cars. Detective Sarah Morrison, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, listened to everything with growing fury. I knew something was off about that accident, she said. But Diane Winchester had an alibi, and without evidence. Check the security cameras at the estate, Victoria said, providing access codes. Everything will be there. What they found over the next 24 hours was damning beyond imagination. Video footage of Diane meeting with a man in the garage, money changing hands. Audio of her practicing her grieving widow performance in the mirror. And most damning of all, clear footage of her drugging Victoria's water and dragging her outside. But Diane Winchester didn't go down without a fight. She arrived at James's apartment the next morning with 3 lawyers and a court order. Victoria Winchester is mentally incompetent, she announced to the police stationed outside. I have psychiatric evaluations stating she's delusional and a danger to herself. As her legal guardian, I'm taking her into protective custody. A bought psychiatrist, Dr. Reynolds, nodded gravely. The patient shows severe paranoia and false memory syndrome. These accusations are clearly products of a disturbed mind. You can't do this. James stood in the doorway unmovable. I can and I will. Officers, arrest this man for kidnapping. But Detective Morrison stepped forward. Actually, Mrs. Winchester, you're under arrest for the murder of Richard Winchester, the murder of Michael Torres, and the attempted murder of Victoria Winchester. Diane's composure finally shattered. That crippled brat ruined everything. 15 years I played the perfect wife. 15 years of pretending to care about that pathetic daughter of his. I earned that fortune. You earned a life sentence, Detective Morrison said coldly. The trial became a media sensation. Tech mogul's widow murdered him for fortune screamed every headline. The evidence was overwhelming. The mechanic who'd cut the brake lines, faced with the death penalty, revealed everything. How Diane had seduced him, promised him money, given him detailed information about Richard's schedule. Stephanie's testimony was devastating. She revealed years of psychological manipulation, how her mother had trained her to see Victoria as less than human because of her disability. She used to say Victoria was a burden, Stephanie told the court, tears streaming, that she was doing Richard a favor by giving him a real daughter. But the truth is, Mr. Winchester loved Victoria more than life itself. And my mother couldn't stand it. Diane received life without parole. Stephanie, due to her age and cooperation, received probation with mandatory therapy. Throughout the trial, James and Emma were Victoria's constant support. James took time off work to drive her to court every day. Emma made her drawings of bunnies fighting mean ladies and winning. You're really brave, Emma told Victoria one evening. Braver than anyone I know. Braver than superheroes? Victoria asked with a smile. Way braver. Superheroes have powers. You just have wheels and you still won. 3 months after the trial ended, Victoria had not only reclaimed her inheritance, but had begun transforming her father's company. She established the Richard Winchester Foundation for Accessibility and Innovation. I want to offer you a position, she told James one evening. Chief Operations Officer. Dad's files show you have a business degree you've been quietly completing. He was planning to promote you before everything. I was just a driver, James said softly. You were never just anything. You were the man my father trusted most. The man who saved my life. The man who's shown me what real family looks like. There was something in her voice that made James really look at her. Not as his former employer's daughter, not as someone he'd rescued, but as the strong, brilliant woman she'd become. James, Victoria said quietly, I'm in love with you. I know it's complicated. I know there are things I can't do, that people will judge us, but these past months have been the happiest of my life. James was quiet for so long that Victoria began to wheel away. I understand if you don't. He caught her wheelchair, turning her to face him. The night I found you in the rain, I thought I was just doing what anyone would do. But every day since, you've shown Emma and me what real courage looks like. You've filled a space in our lives we didn't even know was empty. Is that your way of saying you love me too? Emma and I both do. As if summoned, Emma appeared. Are you guys being mushy? Mrs. Chun says grown-ups get mushy sometimes. Come here, princess. James pulled his daughter close. How would you feel if Miss Victoria became part of our family? Like, officially? Emma's face lit up like Christmas morning. Really? Forever? If she'll have us, James said, looking at Victoria. Forever, Victoria confirmed through tears. 1 year later, the Winchester mansion had been transformed. What was once cold and imposing was now warm and alive. Victoria had insisted on modifications not just for accessibility, but to welcome the families who came through the foundation. The biggest change was in the family wing. Emma's room, decorated in butterflies and rainbows, was right next to the master suite Victoria and James now shared. They'd married 6 months earlier in a small ceremony in the mansion's garden. Victoria had rolled down the aisle in a wheelchair decorated with white roses, Emma as flower girl, Mrs. Chun crying happy tears in the front row. Even Stephanie had attended, slowly rebuilding her life and volunteering at the foundation as part of her healing journey. One evening, as they sat for dinner, James cooking while Emma set the table and Victoria reviewed foundation applications. There was a knock at the door. It was Stephanie, but not the broken girl from a year ago. She stood taller, clearer-eyed, holding an acceptance letter. "I got into medical school," she said, "with the scholarship from the foundation. I wanted to thank you in person." "You earned it," Victoria said warmly. "Your essay about redemption was powerful." "I had a good teacher," Stephanie replied, looking at Victoria meaningfully. "You showed me that strength isn't about taking from others. It's about lifting them up." After Stephanie left, Emma tugged on Victoria's sleeve. "Mom, why did you help her when she was mean to you?" Victoria had insisted Emma call her Mom from the beginning. Now she pulled the girl onto her lap. "Because everyone deserves a chance to become better, sweetheart. And because holding on to anger would have made me like Diane. I chose love instead. Like how Daddy chose love when he found you? Exactly like that." That night, after Emma was asleep, James and Victoria sat on the mansion's balcony overlooking the city. The same driveway where she'd nearly died was now lined with accessibility ramps and gardens. "Do you ever think about that night?" James asked. "Every day," Victoria admitted. "But not with fear anymore. That night I lost everything I thought mattered. My safety, my trust, my father's protection. But I gained something more valuable." "What's that?" "Real love. Real family. You and Emma didn't see a disabled heiress or a burden or an opportunity. You just saw someone who needed help." James had indeed paid a price. Initially, Diane's lawyers had tried to destroy him, claiming he'd manipulated a vulnerable heiress. He'd nearly lost everything fighting the legal battles before Victoria could access her funds. But he'd never wavered, never asked for anything. "Your father would be proud," James said softly. "He knew. I think when he told me to find you, he knew you'd save me. You saved us too. Emma and I were just surviving before you. You brought light back into our lives." A small voice interrupted them. "Can't sleep." Emma padded over in her butterfly pajamas, crawling onto James's lap but reaching for Victoria's hand. "Tell me the story again," she requested sleepily. "Which story, baby?" Victoria asked. "The one where Daddy's the hero who saves the princess, and then the princess saves us right back." James and Victoria exchanged smiles. They'd told her an age-appropriate version of their story, focusing on rescue and love rather than the darkness. "Once upon a time," Victoria began, "there was a princess who thought she'd lost everything. But then a brave knight and his even braver little girl showed her that she'd only lost the things that didn't matter. And they all lived happily ever after." Emma finished, already drifting off. 5 years passed. The foundation had grown into a national organization helping thousands. Emma, now 12, had become a passionate advocate for accessibility, often speaking at foundation events. "My mom is the strongest person I know," she'd tell audiences. "Not because she overcame her disability. She didn't need to overcome it. She's strong because she chose love when others chose hate." Victoria had also discovered something in those years. Hidden in Richard's personal effects was a letter dated the day he changed his will. My dearest Victoria, if you're reading this, then my fears have come true. I've suspected Diane for months. I've taken precautions, the cameras, the will change, and most importantly, this instruction, find James Carter. James doesn't know this, but I've been watching him for years. He's the son I never had, the man I hoped would one day be strong enough to protect you when I couldn't. He has integrity that can't be bought, courage that can't be broken, and a heart big enough to see past the wheelchair to the extraordinary woman you are. I'm leaving you the fortune, yes, but more importantly, I'm leaving you in the path of a man who will love you the way you deserve to be loved. Trust him, my darling. He'll save you in ways neither of you expect. All my love. Dad. Amelia never showed James the letter. Some truths were too precious, but she kept it in her bedside drawer, a reminder that love had been watching over her even in her darkest hour. If stories like this still mean something to you, don't just scroll. Subscribe and stay for the next one. The story could have ended there, but life was never that simple. Stephanie, now a medical resident, came to them with news that shocked everyone. My mother wants to see me. She's dying. Cancer. You don't owe her anything, James said firmly. I know, but I need to go. Not for her, but for me to finally close that chapter. Victoria, will you come with me? It was an impossible request. Face the woman who'd murdered her father and tried to murder her. But Victoria saw something in Stephanie's eyes, the need for a witness, for someone who understood the complexity of loving and hating the same person. I'll come, she said. The prison was cold and sterile. Diane, once perfectly coiffed and designer-clad, was now gaunt and gray. Come to gloat? She rasped at Victoria. I came for Stephanie, Victoria replied simply. Diane's eyes flickered to her daughter. Playing happy families with them, are you? I'm healing, Stephanie said. Something you never taught me. For a moment, Diane's mask slipped. I did love you, in my way. Your way destroyed everything it touched, Victoria said. Diane turned to Victoria. Is he good to you, James? The question was so unexpected that Victoria answered honestly. He's wonderful. Richard would have been pleased, Diane said, and for once there was no sarcasm. He always said James was the best of men, said he reminded him of himself when he was young, ambitious but not corrupted by it. She coughed, blood on her lips. I suppose that's why I hated him. He was everything I could never be. You could have chosen differently, Victoria said. No, Diane replied. Some of us are born broken. The lucky ones find people who love them anyway. The rest of us just break everything we touch. She died 2 weeks later. Stephanie mourned not the mother she'd had, but the mother she'd never have. Victoria held her through it, understanding that grief was complicated when tangled with relief. Life continued. Emma grew taller, her voice maturing. The foundation expanded internationally. James and Victoria's love deepened with each passing year, built on mutual respect and shared values. And sometimes on rainy nights, Victoria would go out to the renovated driveway, now a beautiful garden with accessible paths, and remember, not with pain, but with gratitude. Every terrible thing had led to every beautiful thing that followed. Mom, Emma, now taller than Victoria's sitting height, would find her there. You okay? Just remembering. The night Dad found me. The night my real life began. Because that's what it was, not a tragedy, but a transformation. Not an ending, but a beginning. Diane had tried to destroy her by leaving her in the rain to die. Instead, she'd pushed her into the arms of the only family she'd ever truly needed. The Winchester fortune, built on technology and innovation, had become something far more valuable, a legacy of love, redemption, and the revolutionary idea that strength had nothing to do with standing and everything to do with standing up for others. In the mansion's foundation headquarters, a small plaque hung on the wall. Sometimes the worst storms bring us to the best harbors. This foundation is dedicated to everyone who's ever been left in the rain and to the heroes who rush in to carry them home. Below it, 3 signatures: Victoria Winchester Carter, James Carter, and in careful script, Emma Carter. Family. Chosen, cherished, and unbreakable. Because in the end, Diane had been wrong about everything. Victoria wasn't less than whole. She was the one who made everyone around her complete. And James wasn't just a driver. He was the man who drove straight into a storm and emerged with everything that mattered: love, family, home.